you have to start with, what do I not want in my life?
Mike Gardon, entrepreneur, digital media executive, former trader, former corporate innovator, husband, father, Ironman. He's the CEO of Rejoin Media, a holding company for digital brands and businesses. Mike is also an executive editor and host of the Break podcast on careercloud.com, an advocate of remote work and intentional work-life integration. He runs his teams remotely from the beautiful and affordable Midwest, where he resides with his wife and 3 young boys. If you're struggling making decisions and want to improve your career, this is an episode you don't want to miss. How do you manage to spot those opportunities?
Opportunity is everywhere, and it can be very overwhelming. I think a lot of people start from a place of scarcity. Oh, I can't change. I can't do anything new because this has been my track. I'm scared. It's unknown. But then once you get over that hurdle mentally, you look at the world and you're like, oh my gosh, there are endless opportunities. So how do you prioritize? Anytime you have a bunch of options and you're feeling overwhelmed about choosing, go through this process in 10 minutes.
Let's jump straight into it. Hey, Mike. Welcome to the Nomad Solopreneur Show.
Hey, Gabe. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to speak with you once again. You were just on my show, and I can't wait to see what the audience is like over on your show. This is going to be fun.
Me too. It's amazing that in a span of a few days, we chat on both of our podcasts. So really excited about this. And especially because you're someone that changes career so much. And I want to ask you, since you reinvented it every single time, how was embracing risk and changing environment shaped you as an individual and ultimately as a professional?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was somebody who just never had a real calling. I never felt like I was on one path. And so I felt like I was someone who had to figure it out. And in order to figure something out, not just think about it, but actually take action and do, you have to get really comfortable with the idea of not knowing. Like, you don't inherently know the next step. You don't know what's coming next. And so to prepare for that, you kind of have to have a very adaptable mindset. You have to be building a base within your skill set or your mindset to take on, not only mitigate bad things that might happen, the unknowns, but also be able to capitalize on the good things, the good serendipity that can come your way. As an example, it's like I'm sitting in Wisconsin in the US, and I get to talk to you, who's living over in Bali from Romania. I mean, we couldn't be more different. We might not ever meet in person, yet we're going to have some really meaningful conversations. And to be open to that is just a mindset that I think has to happen for people in the future. The world is changing at a more rapid pace. And so that's risk from the unknowns and bad things happening to you, right? Creative destruction, people lose their jobs. But there's also so many doors and opportunities that are opening. There's 2 sides of risk, and I think you have to be open to seeing both sides. You have to be able to protect and think ahead about the downsides, and you have to be open and willing to dive head first to capture the upside.
Definitely. And how you are building these openness opportunities and capitalizing on luck, because as you know as well, there's not such thing as luck. It's something that we build. But for those listening, how you build that?
Yeah, I think it's something that I am making a career out of studying. So I was fortunate enough to start my career in finance. And so I learned a lot about risk. I learned a lot about how to try to sort of analyze risk. I learned a lot about how you can minimize downside and try to position yourself for maximum upside, and using financial tools. And so I talk about that a lot in my writing. Things like options, right? Options are a financial tool that basically you pay a little bit to kind of minimize your risk, and you have some sort of it's not unlimited, but leveraged upside. And I think in the sort of the entrepreneurship fire ecosystem, fire being, what is it, retire early kind of mentality, right? There's a lot of talk about options and diversification, but having too many options is actually a hindrance to you. So it's this mentality of balance. I always think about balance. Too much of anything is not a good thing. And so I think it starts with mindset of I need to be balanced and I need to be open to many possibilities. And then when you just have that as a default mindset, you can start to what I call, well, in gambling, you would call handicapping the odds of something happen. But in our lingo here, it would be sort of like you're able to position yourself and compare the odds of two different options happening. You compare them together and you say, okay, when you compare these two, option A has a bigger upside and a more limited downside. So I'm going to put more of my chips. I'm going to bet more in that scenario and less in the other scenario. And you're able to allocate your resources. It's not just money, right? You have all sorts of resources, time being the most precious, time and attention. And I think about it as basically the whole pie of your resources and attention that you have, you're going to allocate those resources to different options. And how you size that allocation is how you are able to deal with risk. So if one option, this is how the greatest investors in the world allocate their portfolios amongst a lot of stocks. They don't just bet evenly on 5 different stocks. They see what's working, and over time they increase their bets. And you can do that with your life. You can take mini actions and look for the signal that you're on the right track, and then start to allocate more time, attention, and resources to that path. And I've used that a number of different times. I've just said, okay, I need to start something new. I'm going to start 3 different options. I'm going to see what works, and I'm going to bet more heavily on the one that works.
That's an amazing example. And in the same time, I see a lot of people struggling to notice those opportunities. And we live in a world where options are abundant. The fear of missing out is real. We are bombarded from all directions with tools, ideas, resources, and so on. And sometimes it's so hard to choose the right options and to allocate the right resources towards that. How do you manage to spot those opportunities and options?
Opportunity is everywhere, and so it can be very overwhelming. I think a lot of people start from a place of scarcity, like, oh, I can't change, I can't do anything new because this has been my track, I'm scared, it's unknown. But then once you get over that hurdle mentally, you look at the world and you're like, oh my gosh, there are endless opportunities, right? So how do you prioritize? Because you're limited resources. So what I've been learning, I learned a great trick, which I'll share with the audience kind of towards the end of how to sort of prioritize really quickly with opportunities. But I learned 15 years ago. And since then, all the work that I've been doing is like, how do you look at yourself and your advantages objectively? The advantages that you have in your life, and then how do you use those to the best of your ability? So Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger are the greatest investors of all time, live in the United States. If people don't know who they are, you can Google Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in the world. And he's got this thing called circle of competence, which basically means like you need to know what you know and stay within that circle. Like venturing out of your circle of competence can lead to ruin, can lead to problems. I looked at that and I said, that's really interesting. So that means you have to know yourself, but it's incomplete. It's not just knowledge. It's not just what you know, but circle of competence to me encompasses all of the ways that you could potentially create an advantage for yourself. And so I came up with 8 different ways. I'm not going to go through all of them, but a lot of them are like expertise, energy, the things that give you energy versus take energy away, your interests, your personality, and how you learn, and created a system to kind of map out all of these different ways that you can create an advantage for yourself. And then we try to go through an exercise where we stack that and create options within that sort of power alley. So we take a look at a look at a whole map. We try to connect the dots, and we say, Gabe is really good in this area, right? He's really good at talking to people, meeting new people, hosting on a podcast. He knows the world of freelance inside and out. He's curious about how to build systems. And by looking at all of those advantages, Gabe's got a really good shot at building some type of coaching business, helping freelancers and entrepreneurs travel the world, because he's super interested in being a nomad as well. A lot of people, they go through this exercise and they're like, this is really hard, but they come out of it with a much clearer picture of where they should be dedicating their time and attention. And they feel more confident in that, rather than saying, oh yeah, the latest thing online is everybody's building an audience on LinkedIn, or everybody is going into Chat GPT or whatever. Like, people tend to chase the shiny object, but when you're really clear about what you are uniquely good at and how you can actualize that in the world, now you have more confidence to go in that direction. And you can start to place mini bets along that path in order to get signal that you're on the right track and start to bet bigger and change within that path.
And that's a really powerful exercise to do, because without having that clarity of actual your advantages, it's almost impossible to leverage that. And I did a similar one as well by asking others, like former colleagues, former bosses, current partners or collaborators, friends, family, and ask them about my strengths, my weaknesses, and especially that strength part, because we often very easily spot what we are worst at. And if you just focus on the things that we want to improve, we don't see those advantages that you mentioned. And those are really valuable comparing to the disadvantages, because those we can leverage right away without spending time of improving. And the example that you gave with Warren Buffett, that such an influential person in the investment world and in the world altogether is focusing on the things he's best at. He's not trying to be a jack of all trades.
Right. Yeah, I would definitely argue that, as humans, we're wired to see the negative, more easily than the positive. And so it actually is kind of hard work, but those advantages are hiding in plain sight. And so part of this is like logical analysis, and then part of this is an exercise in creativity. So you asked about spotting upside opportunities before. Well, one of the ways that you do that is when you get really clear about your advantages and you say, forget the disadvantages. What are the advantages that I have right now? Then the next step is to go through just a massive brainstorm exercise. And it's not just an hour. It might be days. It might take weeks. It might take months to do this. But you look at those advantages and you start to brainstorm all of the different ways you could leverage those advantages and that base that you already have within you, and start to embrace your uniqueness and how your uniqueness or quirkiness or, whatever it might be, right? Being from Romania, living in Bali, like, how can I use those things as an advantage down the road? And you start to unlock this creativity muscle where people are like, I would never thought of myself as creative, but this is a problem solving exercise and I'm trying to design my life going forward. So you get this rush of energy from that creativity side, and that's how you get more confident along the way, and you start to spot opportunities that you're uniquely positioned to take advantage of.
Definitely. And those things make us unique in our approach, in our messaging, in our way of dealing with business, building a personal brand, and so on. And you were right. Those things that I took into consideration when I built the Nomad Solopreneur brand, because I knew this is my differentiator. This is the thing that represents me, that I value, like freedom and so on. And speaking of this, I know that you're a big advocate of remote work and intentionally work-life integration. And someone that is a dad of 3 kids and having a base, I think there is a big drive there to make this happen without having to commute going to an office and managing a big team on site. How did you manage to integrate remote work in your own life and grow your company?
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel like I'm not a nomad, but I'm a nomad at heart. I was thinking, you're the nomad solopreneur, and I was thinking of like, what would I call myself? And I almost think it's the homestead solopreneur because I'm living the life that you're going after, but I'm doing it, in the context of a family and with roots in one place. So I think, one of the things I just always had with me was I knew I probably wasn't fit for an office environment. And so I was always seeking opportunities where I could sort of work by myself or remotely. But I did do a stint in corporate America doing some consulting for a large company here in the town where I'm from. And I just went through an exercise where I was like, I have to engineer my way out of this. And I don't know what it is next, what the next step is, but I'm going to try to build a process to do this and take my time. And the number one thing I started with, I think this is really important. It's simple, but it's really important. I think for people who are looking for something different, but don't know what to do, you got to invert the problem. You have to start with, what do I not want in my life? And when you start from that, it actually, logically, it's taking options off the table. It's taking option overload off the table. So if I say I don't want to travel for my job, I'm automatically not going to be looking for jobs that have a lot of travel, right? That's reducing the amount of options that are available to me. So I said, what do I not want? I said, I don't want to travel. I want to be home and available and flexible for my kids because my wife's got an important job and her job in our household actually comes first. She's a doctor. And so I want to be home for the kids. I have boys. I love coaching. I want to do that kind of stuff. So no travel. I don't want the stress of raising money for a venture company again. It's like just not something I want to do. And I had this whole list of what I don't want in my life. And that's where I started. And then from there, it was just an exercise in, okay, well, what is the set of possibilities open to me then with all of these constraints, right? I think constraints are very powerful. And when you invert the problem, you are by default putting constraints on your option set. So what's available to me? How does that compare to my advantages? And now I'm going to place a few bets. I'm going to use these advantages. I'm going to go after option A, B, and C. We're going to throw them all out there, see what works. And I'm going to start to bet heavier on the one that's working or the one that I like or the one that's fueling me more. And that was kind of the system. But it all started with, what are the things I just don't want in my life? I didn't start with what I want. I didn't start with, I want to make $8 trillion and a unicorn company and all that like lifestyle stuff. I just said, what do I want to eliminate? And started from there.
That's a very smart way to approach things because more often than not, most of us start always with the wants. What I want to achieve, what are my goals? But having just that in the frame, everything is getting blurry because you don't know your advantages. You don't know the things that you actually don't want to do. And those are the most important one because we have a limited amount of energy. And if we focus all of our energy on the deadline, the goal that's sitting in front of us, we start doing things that we don't want. And if we end up doing things that we don't like, we don't enjoy, we'll end up in a place that we don't want to be. And that's a fast track to the bottom.
Exactly. You basically are not aware of what trade-offs you're going to have to make in pursuit of whatever it is that you want. So the classic example is somebody coming out of college in the United States saying, I want to make a lot of money. Oh, I've heard lawyers make a lot of money, so I'm going to go to law school. And my dad's an attorney. He's actually a very happy one, but the majority of people that go into that profession, I think, end up sort of regretting it. And so that because they don't understand the trade-offs and what they are going to give up and what they're going to have to deal with in pursuit of what they thought they wanted, which was making, money, and never considered all of the other ways, the other option set of getting to that same goal, but in a different way.
Yes, exactly. And that's the case for most people. I went on that path in my early career, and I ended up in a place that I didn't want it to be. And switching that mindset and actually focusing on the right things and taking this type of exercise, like analyzing what they want. And it's one of the, speaking of remote teams and outsourcing and so on, it's one of the most important exercise. Just analyze what you don't want to do, what you're not good at, and those two will be connected. And you'll fast realize that you don't have to do those things. You don't have to do everything. Even that, I don't know, your business or your career needs those, you can outsource them. And remote work, as we both of us know, it's the future. It's something that we can leverage in order to outsource work, in order to make the most of our time and focus on the right things. A part of leveraging contractors or remote teams, what other resources or tools and best practices do you use in your own business in order to make the most of your time, to be able to spend it with your kids and actually take care of their growth rather than focusing too much time on your business?
So I do outsource work to contractors. I have people on my team in the Philippines, in Colombia, and I actually have our tech team that does our website and all that kind of stuff is in the Gambia, Africa. And I think it's so cool that I have this little mini organization and we're all over the place. So I think utilizing people is fantastic. Obviously, there are ways of kind of automating different tasks using software like Zapier. And we're really utilizing ChatGPT a lot in terms of creating content for websites and for Twitter and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't matter where you live, internationally or whatever. Like if you can work with those tools, you have a really good skill set to kind of go do anything. So we're utilizing those a lot. I use a VA for a lot of personal stuff, family stuff. So helping me, hey, here's the soccer schedule and here's the football schedule and here's the baseball schedule. Can you go put all this stuff in and order things? And so I do that from just a logistic standpoint of running the family too. So when we are together, we can be together and not have to worry about doing all of those types of tasks. So it's a lot of delegation and trying to stick around. What are the things that I'm really good at that I need to do, and trying to get rid of tasks that frankly people are just better than me at anyway.
I love that mentality. And that's the thing, we often spend a lot of time without realizing on small tasks and small activities that just waste our time and basically take us from family time, from friends time, and so on. And high leverage task in our business, and like working with people all over the world like you do is just amazing. And of course, it's not easy to find the right people, but once you do, you're good to go. And speaking of that, there is some sort of principles that you apply when you hire someone for a specific task, or how do you go about it?
To me, it's about fit. You obviously have to be able to have the skills to do whatever task that it is, but I feel like we have a very close-knit remote team, which is kind of odd to say. Like, I feel like we sort of have a way of communicating with each other over tools like Slack, where we get each other's comedy and we're trying to be silly and funny and that kind of thing. And it comes across. We just have this genuine way of being. So I hire for that more than anything. Like, are we going to get along on Zoom calls or on quick chat sessions or email? And I think one of the ways that you hire for that is I'm really big on your ability to write clean, clear, crisp, get across emotion even. And so from the moment I am potentially talking with somebody to bring on, I'm analyzing their writing capability. Different mediums, how do they do on Slack versus email? Because I don't want an email in my Slack message, right? And I want enough context in my email so that I don't have to dig through a whole bunch of different email threads to get all the information that I need to make the decision. So that I find is a really critical skill in hiring remote, is the ability to analyze someone's writing and then be able to spend some time with them virtually like this. You and I have never met in person, but like we've really hit it off over video, right? And so I think I would rather hire somebody who is super genuine and cares than have the best expert at something. Like I just need to have that mesh with the team and the culture and be able to get along with that person.
That's really important, because otherwise when you work with someone for a long time, or you try to build that connection, that bond, even that it's a remote team, that bond needs to exist. And without that, right from the beginning, it's quite hard.
I think that one of the most beneficial upside surprises to running a remote team has been I am interacting with people from different cultures. And if I was running a company and we were all in one office in Wisconsin where I live, where 85% of people are the same, and that would be my pool of candidates that I could hire from, I wouldn't get these experiences of chatting with somebody from Africa about their trip that they took to the Taj Mahal last year, right? That just wouldn't happen. And so that, I think, is just the coolest upside surprise in the whole thing.
Yeah, definitely. And it happened to me when my first interaction was with a client from another country. And I was blown away because I thought that all clients are the same, have the same requirements, expectation, but I was so wrong. Different culture, different expectation, different way of seeing things, different way of communicating. And that literally opened up my view on things, on life and in general. And my first trip outside the country was the same. Like, wow, this world is so different, so unique, so beautiful. And not just the landscapes, the people makes this world beautiful. And yeah, having this opportunity, I think it's something that everyone should leverage, and not to mention the opportunities that we give to those that are in countries that otherwise will struggle to make a living. Us hiring them to help them feed their family or have trips, like you mentioned, trips to other countries, trips to other regions in that country is just fulfilling. And when it comes to your podcast, I noticed that you have a lot of episodes. How you are able to stay consistent, produce, and get quality guests all the time?
You know, one thing to note is that the number of episodes kind of predates me. I actually acquired the site careercloud.com. It had a podcast going. It was mainly the gentleman that started the site it was mainly hiring tips and resume tips and interview tips and things like that. And that's not the stuff that turns me on. I think it's very valuable, but it's not what I want to do. And so when I decided to take over the podcast, my main thing was, what do I want to talk about? And what would I talk about if I didn't get paid for it or no one was listening? Just what were the things that I would want to talk about? And so that's how I got to thinking about this idea of the break. And what is a break? And I'm not talking about like taking a break, like I need a break. I'm talking about smashing, breaking, breaking your view of work, breaking your view of yourself and building something new, taking a different direction, breaking the invisible scripts and the society's rules that are in your head that you think you have to follow to imagine different possibilities and cultivate your life. So I just think that passion kind of comes through for the topic. And I think you have that as well. And so I'm just out looking for people who have done something different. They've been on the traditional path and then they've decided consciously to take a different path. This wasn't good enough for them. And I think getting into those moments, I call them break moments. And we talked about yours on my show recently. I think those moments are powerful because I think there's a lot of people that are out there feeling something and they don't exactly know what that feeling is. And so if I can have people come on the show and articulate what they were feeling in that moment that made them change, and even one person can say, oh, I feel that too. Then they make the connection that they have a choice and they have an ability to change. And so I just feel like that's the driving force behind it. And I think when you reach out to people with that kind of pitch, like, hey, I saw you post this on Twitter and it wasn't about your business or your niche. It was about your past and how you decided to choose yourself and change. I just think those moments are really powerful and those are stories that need to get told. And so I've found that when you reach out to people, they want to talk about that. You're like, cool, I write every day on whatever topic, right? And that just gets kind of old. But yeah, I had an interesting, unique experience when I was 18 years old or 35 years old, and it changed my life. And you come and talk about that. I think that's worth talking about. And so I think guests want to talk about that and share their story.
Yeah, I love that. And that's definitely the case because we are flooded with tips, information, and everything in between. But these unique paths, these unique breaks of society patterns and so on are the things that grabs our attention, are the things that we admire at others. Because even that we do this type of break of patterns, we don't realize how important they are until we arrive at a certain point and we just notice, oh my God, this literally changed my life. That decision that I thought is not important for us. And a part of your podcast, The Break, where else people can connect with you in order to get in touch or work with you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter. That's where you and I got connected through a mutual friend, which was fantastic. You can search my name, Michael Gardon, Gardon, on that platform. I am on Twitter, but I'm less active. I'm MN Gardon, Gardon there. And then careercloud.com is our main site where we have a lot of content related to career, remote work, getting jobs, hiring, doing all of those kinds of things. And we're trying to position it for the future in terms of, I see the future of labor as being people who flux in and out of remote work and corporate work, jobs, solopreneurship, contracting. And so we're trying to position ourselves to give people resources to move in and out of those situations. So careercloud.com is where I write a lot and a lot of our content.
Awesome. And for those listening, I'll put the links in the show notes as well for your convenience. And to wrap things up, for those interested in remote work and national work-life integration, can you suggest a practical challenge they can undertake in the next 24 hours, basically to take the next step towards that goal?
One of the things that we've been really talking about on this podcast so far is choosing. And I think that a lot of us are sitting on the sidelines because we're trying to choose between options. So we talked a little bit about understanding your advantages, and that can be kind of a long process. A really quick way to make a decision is I learned from the U.S. Special Forces, and it's called the Carver Matrix. Okay. And so during a war, the Special Forces kind of needed a quick framework to assess and rank targets, either like for offense, what to attack, or defense, what to protect. And they came up with Carver. So the acronym stands for criticality, accessibility, recoverability, vulnerability, effect, and recognizability. That's a lot of words there, right? But criticality is really like, how critical is this option to your mission or goal? Will this move the needle? Will it break a bottleneck? Can it help you better understand the sequencing of a large project? Things like that. So just starting with that one, if you write Carver across the top of a sheet of paper, and down the left-hand side, you place your options. Let's say you're just trying to decide between 4 different things. You rank 1 through 5 along each Carver acronym or a piece, right? So option 1 might have a 5 for criticality. Option 2 might be a 3. Option 3 might be a 1, and option 4 might be a 4. And so option 1 would be most critical of all of your options to move you forward. And you go through that. So the next one is accessibility. How easy is it to get the right help, the right pieces, the right assets, the right resources to accomplish it? Recoverability. How hard is it to recover or change course if you make a mistake? Vulnerability. How easy is this to accomplish or defend? Effect is, what is the likely effect? So here's where you start to get into odds. Is this a home run, a single? Is it a hell yeah or a meh for you inside, right? How does that feel? Recognizability. How clear are you on the option? Is it fuzzy, or do you know what all the steps are? So going through that exercise, you can do it in 5 to 10 minutes, and then you come out with a kind of a stack rank total between all 4 options. and numerical number, you add them up. And so if option 1 is a 20 and option 2 is a 10, you should feel pretty darn good about going after option 1. So it's just a way to really quickly stack rank options. And you can do this with basically anytime you have a bunch of options and you're feeling overwhelmed about choosing. Go through this process in 10 minutes, choose the next one, take the next step. And at a later date, if it turns out to be a dud, you just go to the next option and start over.
I love that. It's a brilliant way, an easy way to prioritize and focus on the right things, because as you all know, focus is the most important thing. If you have it dispersed in different ways, we cannot achieve much. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us and your story. Can't wait to share it with our audience. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
It was my pleasure. Great to talk with you again. Let's keep it going. I can't wait to follow all of your progress. And I know we'll be collaborating and seeing each other a lot online.
Same here, Mike. Thank you so much again. Thanks for listening, everybody. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to subscribe to your favorite podcast station to not miss when we drop the next one. We have lots of exciting guests and surprises for you coming up. This is your host, Gabe Marushka, with the Nomad Solopreneur Show. Until next week, Pura Vida!